Millions of people perform leg exercises every day with the intention of improving their health, yet many of these same individuals are inadvertently developing chronic knee pain. This joint degradation is rarely the result of a single traumatic event or one specific workout. Instead, the damage accumulates through thousands of individual repetitions, each contributing a small amount of stress to the internal structures of the knee. In the pursuit of higher numbers and increased intensity, the subtle indicators of joint stress are often overlooked. The focus remains on the weight moved, while the knee's absorbed forces they are anatomically ill-equipped to manage. Because the body is capable of adapting to significant stress, these issues often remain undetected for months or years. By the time the first signs of discomfort reach the brain, the cumulative wear on the joint is already well advanced. This progression eventually reaches a threshold where basic activities, like descending a flight of stairs or maintaining a running cadence, become sources of irritation. What feels like a sudden injury is usually the final stage of a long-term mechanical failure. The knees function as critical links in the lower body, responsible for stabilizing the frame under the full weight of the torso and managing the high-impact forces generated during locomotion. Placing hundreds of kilograms of force through these joints requires precise alignment. Without it, the cartilage and ligaments are subjected to shear forces that exceed their biological limits. While it is common to attribute joint pain to the aging process or genetic factors, these explanations often ignore the primary role of repetitive load management. The prevailing culture in many training environments prioritizes the total weight on the bar over the technical execution of the movement. This shift in focus directly influences how the joints wear over time. The quality of a movement pattern determines the long-term health of the joint. Precise mechanics allow the surrounding musculature to support the bone and connective tissue, rather than leaving the joint to bear the burden alone. Observations of standard gym performance often reveal a reliance on momentum and rushed eccentric phases. When the knees collapse inward during a squat or the heels left during a press, the muscles are no longer in a position to protect the joint. The lower body operates as a kinetic chain, a series of connected segments where the glutes, quadriceps, and hamstrings must synchronize their contractions to distribute load safely. Within this chain, hips act as the primary engine to generate massive power, while knees provide stability. When hips fail to engage, the system compensates. Force meant for the posterior chain funnels directly into the knee, which lacks the capacity for that load. Early warning signs, such as localized stiffness or mild swelling after a session, are often dismissed as routine fatigue. However, these are the biological indicators that the compensation patterns are placing the joint under excessive strain. Most exercise-related knee issues are rooted in these learned neuromuscular habits. Correcting the mechanics requires a deliberate shift in how the brain recruits muscles during a lift. The human body is remarkably efficient at finding workarounds when a primary muscle group is underactive. These compensations allow for the completion of a lift, but they slowly erode the joint's integrity until it reaches a breaking point. A common error in lower body training is a knee-dominant movement pattern. This occurs when the knee initiates the descent and carries the majority of the tension, rather than sharing the load with the hips. In a hip-dominant squat, movement begins at the pelvis. Glutes and hamstrings distribute force, allowing natural knee tracking. Conversely, in a knee-dominant squat, knees shear past toes, while hips remain upright. This extreme tension forces the knee to act as the primary brake. Similar issues appear on the leg press when the platform is lowered too quickly, causing the pelvis to tilt and the lower back to round. As the knees buckle inward under the weight, the joint surfaces are compressed unevenly, leading to localized wear. Effective training focuses on the tension placed upon the target muscles. When momentum takes over, the muscles disengage, and the mechanical load is transferred directly to the passive structures of the joint. The nervous system encodes these patterns with every set. Rushed, uncontrolled repetitions train the brain to bypass the stabilizing muscles, a habit that carries over into everyday movements outside of the gym environment. Because these patterns are learned, they can be reprogrammed through deliberate practice. By slowing down the movement and focusing on specific muscle recruitment, the brain can establish more efficient pathways that prioritize joint safety. Each repetition performed with technical precision serves as a protection against future injury. Conversely, ignoring mechanical flaws creates a deficit that eventually manifests as physical damage. Consider two athletes following the same program. The individual who prioritizes the mechanics of the lift will see consistent strength gains, while the individual who ignores technique will eventually be forced to stop training due to joint inflammation. To correct a knee-dominant pattern, the initial descent must begin with a slight posterior shift of the hips. As the hips descend, the glutes stretch to store elastic energy. On the ascent, the glutes contract first to drive the pelvis upward, while the hamstrings maintain the angle of the shin to keep the knee stable. Sustainable leg strength is the result of this coordinated effort. When every muscle in the chain performs its anatomical role, the knees are shielded from unnecessary shear forces. Mobility also plays a critical role in joint health. When the ankle joint lacks sufficient dorsiflexion, the ability for the shin to tilt forward over the foot, the body must compensate by allowing the heel to lift or the knee to collapse inward to reach the required depth. The knee is often the victim of limitations elsewhere in the kinetic chain. Restricted movement in the ankles or weakness in the hip abductors forces the knee to move in planes it was not designed to handle. Physical pain serves as a data point. It indicates that the current movement strategy is exceeding the tissue's capacity. Responding to this information by adjusting technique is a fundamental aspect of high-level training. Experienced athletes recognize that technical mastery is a prerequisite for adding load. They prioritize the integrity of the movement, knowing that the most impressive lift is one that can be repeated safely for decades. Instead of measuring progress solely by the weight on the machine, evaluate each set by the degree of control maintained through the full range of motion. Long-term fitness requires a commitment to these mechanical principles. By focusing on controlled tension and proper recruitment, you ensure that your training builds strength without compromising your joints. If these insights have shifted your perspective on leg day, consider sharing them with your training partners. For more detailed analysis of biomechanics and performance, subscribe to Health Pulse. Prioritize control, protect your joints, and build strength that lasts. See you in the next video.